Hey, friends, something's making our kids sick. And if you're in agreement, you need to listen to this episode. Something is creating a very magnified inflammation of our systems. I believe that our kids are suffering. And my list of allergies 22 years ago in my classroom was much, much shorter than my lists are today. What is going on? What are we dealing with as parents? And I think that this is going to manifest into mental health issues down the road. So if you want to put all the pieces together with me, I'm going to take you on a little journey of my brain and how I've been connecting these dots over the years as a professional and as a mother. I'm really glad you're here because I think you and we're our kids' advocates. We're the ones who are going to ultimately heal our children, save our children, and give them the best opportunity to have the best future possible. I'm going to be talking specifically about autoimmune and how autoimmune disease is what I have found in my family to be really, really detrimental and really been exacerbating issues over the years. And so much is connected to autoimmune disease. We know that there are links to cancers. We know there's links to long-term health conditions. I do have a daughter with an autoimmune disease, which is part of why this is important, but it's also something that I think we're seeing on a mass scale because even allergies and skin sensitivities like eczema and things like that, those are indicative that your child is struggling with something. There's something called a mind-gut axis. You can Google it. It's fascinating. Harvard and all the medical journals, they're all talking about the mind-gut axis. Let's just start there. We know that sometimes people have mental health issues and it makes them physically feel sick. We've known this for years. There's diagnoses, there's even mystery diagnoses where people have pain and they can't find the source of the pain and it becomes classified as a mental health disorder. What exactly are we dealing with? It's really interesting. So for years and years and years, people thought the sickness started in the brain, which is completely logical. But what if the sickness is actually starting in the gut? And then one of the symptoms is exacerbated mental health concerns, such as anxiety, depression, bipolar, things like that. There are many, many people. I have even trained under a doctor who was diagnosed bipolar and was able to heal herself. And I think that's really riveting because she is healed. Like I've been on calls with her. I've been watching her for years. She's restored relationships and building relationships. If she can do it, more of us can do it. And I think that if we start to lock down on the changes we're seeing that could be significantly indicating that something is on the rise, that's affecting our kids' psyche and also us, we can really start to heal ourselves. Because if it came on, that means you weren't born with it. So something might have caused it. And if you follow that train of thought, there's hope. There's so much hope. And yes, 86% of mental health disorders are treatable. And you will live a good life. And more than that are able to be managed. And people are still living with managed mental health disorders. But what if we could find it and catch it earlier so that our kids don't have to live with those symptoms?
If you haven't had a chance yet, head over to www.selffoundry.com where you can find freebies like our tech contract for families dealing with technology addiction to phones and social media, or my Anger in the House manual to help you work through some emotions that are big and hard to deal with on a day-to-day. This will get your family all on one page, help you eradicate fights, lower emotions and drop them down to a manageable level, and also just continue to be in touch with us so that we can continue to give you up-to-date latest information to help you be an amazing parent who advocates for their child.
Why are so many disorders diagnosed at 14, 15, 16 years of age? I find it really fascinating because we know if we look back in our kids' history, we can almost see that there was a change. Something happened to our kids. So here's my story. My daughter developed weird symptoms of things when she was younger, but we didn't know what it was for years and years and years. And she had all these little medical concerns. What I knew was when she was little, she was fine. And as she got older, she was not fine. And it started to happen in a progression. And there were little signs that I think you could maybe catch with your kids. One of the early signs was she started to tell me that she thought she needed to be a vegetarian. And she wasn't really liking a lot of foods that were pretty standard foods for kids, like chicken nuggets. She didn't like chicken nuggets. Like, what? That's so weird. But there were definitely things that she would say didn't make her, like, she just didn't want it. It didn't make her sick. It was interesting to me. Like when I think back, I don't remember her being sick, but I do remember her just having an aversion to certain foods. Down the road, we ended up learning that she has severe food sensitivities, particularly to lectin. Lectin is a food sensitivity that too many people don't know anything about, and you need to know what that is. So, if you don't know what lectin is, you need to go look on maybe Dr. Gundry. He has some great free resources about what lectin is. It's in a lot of food. Like all the food that we feed our kids has lectin if you go look at the list. Not just gluten, it's not just dairy. Dairy and lectin go together. Gluten and lectin go together. So a lot of times when you eliminate one of those, you're reducing your lectin intake, but it was more than that. It was definitely more. So if we start to kind of go back, like what were some early signs? Well, I started to notice she was getting sick, sicker than most kids. Like she had scarlet fever. Her appendix was bad and ended up bursting. She was on major antibiotics for both of those instances, which I believe is what triggered a microbiome in her gut issue. And that possibly is what really kickstarted. She might have always been sensitive, but this like kickstarted a disease. And one of the signs that were really becoming apparent after she was sick with those two things was she would have anxiety. She would have this like elevated stress. But I knew it wasn't her thinking. It was her physiological body triggering anxiety. For instance, her heart would start to race. And it wasn't due to a thought. It would just come on very suddenly. Like she could be relaxing, watching a TV show and just boom. She's like, my heart is really feeling funny. It's going really fast. Just a little girl. And I would touch her heart and like check it and like check her pulse. It was through the roof, guys. It was a physiological issue. And then that would make her feel like, if you've ever had like my heart sometimes skips beats, which we've been monitoring, but like it gives you this feeling of like anxiety, like what is going on? And it doesn't feel right. Like you instantly know when your body doesn't feel good, it puts you into a heightened state of alert. It's a biologically sound idea when you think about it. Our body should tell us mentally like something's wrong. So when something physiologically is going on, if our body didn't alert our brain, how do we know to go fix the problem? Right? This makes sense. So her body was starting to give her signs and it was starting to affect her emotionally and mentally because she would have a lot more stress, a lot more anxiety than say my other two kids ever really experienced. What I think we were missing was that it was always directly correlated to meals and it just seemed to build. And one of the things I learned way too late in the game, which you should know, if your child has a food sensitivity, when we eat food, it stays in our system for 4 days. I'm not a doctor. Listen, I have worked with many doctors. This is just what I've learned. But our body needs 4 days to really purge out food. I learned this from Dr. Maggie Yu. I paid to be part of her program to learn about autoimmune disease once we figured out what my daughter had. So it stays in your body for 4 days. So here's the thing. So if you maybe have a little bit on Monday, you're okay. Tuesday, maybe you have the same food because, right, we eat leftovers or we might eat the same cereal multiple days in a row. So you have a little bit more on Tuesday, and now it's like a point system. It's adding up. And then on day 3, if you have it again, it's like another point is added because it's still in your system and your body's still pushing it through, right? And then on day 4, that's like the kablooey, right? Like it's just been too many days of consuming a food that your body really doesn't know what to do with. And here's the reality. Is our food not genetically modified? We are leaving God's design of food. It is so hard to find wheat in America that is not biologically engineered. Like bioengineering is a thing. So we know GMO, all that kind of stuff. It keeps getting renamed and rebranded because, of course, they don't want us as moms who are shopping to know that that food is not whole food, like God created food. My motto with my kids now is eat God's food. Try to find as much sourcing of God's food without genetic distortion and scientific stuff as possible. We know that Cheerios and things like that, there's so much insecticide that is being used also to protect the crops, which we understand. But like, here's the bananas part. I have a farm nearby us that I love to go to. Very expensive. It is not technically organic. And here's why. FDA approves the organic label of all of these insecticides and fertilizers and things like that. And they label it organic, right? But it's actually not organic, like as clean as God would have created it to be. So one of the things that they taught me was that they actually are using herbs, like essential oils, to protect their crops, which is not FDA regulated, but it's actually a cleaner sourcing of protection. It doesn't have all the chemicals and things in it. And to me, that was really important because that's a group of Christian farmers, and they're trying to, as much as possible, protect God's food as God intended it without adding all these things. I heard, and I would love some sourcing on this, that we've had over 1,000 chemicals added to the FDA approved list over the past few decades. Thousands. Guys, if there is 1,000 new chemicals in our kids' food, are you at all shocked that they're having more neurological issues compared to our generation? I mean, it makes a lot of sense to me because our chemical system is literally neurons connecting with chemical messaging. So as our nervous system is talking to itself, of course, if we're adding chemicals to our body, it's going to go a little wonky, right? And now you add in something called leaky gut. Leaky gut is really, really devastating. That's what my daughter was diagnosed with. It is when we are ingesting food that our body doesn't recognize as food. It's been so distorted, or we're so sensitive to it. It's not an allergy, by the way. Allergies, you know right away, like can't breathe, throwing up, vomiting, things like that. Sensitivities are a little bit more subtle. It's like, I don't feel good. I don't feel right. That continued over time can create leaky gut. Your gut lining is super thin. It is very, very thin and fragile. And as food goes through our digestive system and our body is not sure what it starts to attack it as if it's a foreign entity, like a virus. And it starts to break it down because it doesn't know how to process it and it doesn't recognize it as food. Corn is a big one. And think about how many oils and things like that are created from corn. As we're ingesting it and it's traveling through our system, the lining of our stomach and our intestines is getting attacked as well because it's kind of sticking to, it's gross, but that's your digestive system. So it's getting damaged. It's getting damaged badly to the point where it creates microscopic holes, but those holes are able to leak toxins from our food. All these chemicals get leaked into our body and go into the general system and are just flowing. And so as our body is starting to see all of these chemicals that are now in our system that shouldn't be, they should have been excreted through, now our body is starting to attack organs that are not being touched by these chemicals, really, like these toxins in our body. So it's really interesting. I mean, I am not a doctor. I'm not giving you I'm trying to give you the real mom talk. We have a problem. Houston, there's a problem. And what's so cool, I learned from my daughter being sick, it takes 2 weeks to kill off an infection, to get rid of whatever it is that's really hurting your child. It could be parasites. It could be toxins, which you would have to see a doctor. I see a Chinese herbalist who uses herbs to help our body get rid of and excrete out all of the toxins. And that takes about 2 weeks. Or just to get rid of the food that we're sensitive to so that our body stops attacking it and just get it all out of our system, right? So in 2 weeks, your gut system can be cleaned up so you won't have the problem. But then it takes 1 to 2 years for your whole system to repair. This is where I think God did such a beautiful job. We actually regenerate the cells of our digestive system. Your cells will renew. It takes about 2 years, depending on how bad the damage is. So for my daughter, she was very sick, very sick. Her leaky gut was really bad. If somebody went in and checked her out, would have had large holes, larger than most. First of all, thank God I had access to resources. And I know moms all around the world do not have access to resources, which is why I want to give you free access to information that you can use right now. You can do this. You can help your child. So if you are seeing anxiety, depression, low motivation, stomach sensitivity, stomach issues of any sort, whether it's vomiting, diarrhea, just feeling unease, that unsettled feeling, some kids might call it like kicking in their stomach or butterflies, like all these different things, gurgling, gas, a lot of gas, things like that. Your child's system is giving you an early indicator that something's wrong. Something's wrong. So what do? We need to not treat sick. Remember, doctors are there to help us treat illness, brokenness, right? Like if you're sick, they're good to help. If you're broken, they can put you back together and then God can do the rest, right? So those are the things that doctors are really trained in. They're not trained in the preventative. Dr. Maggie Yu trained in NYU, and she said she had one class for a half an hour about supplements and things like that, go over like preventative stuff. Half hour out of all of her medical training. So when she got sick, she had to go and figure this all out because nobody knew. All of her friends who were doctors could not help her get better. They couldn't figure it out because she had gotten too far down this like slippery slope. So she ended up having to go into something called functional medicine. I call it the rabbit hole. If anybody's in the rabbit hole with me, woo-hoo, we're all broke, right? That's what happens. It's a cash medical industry because those doctors had to go to extra schooling, and it's not as easily regulated. It's really tricky. They're going to get really specialized. They don't know everything, right? And that's the problem. You got to like really spend time finding doctors who will help you with your particular issue. But one of the universal ones that is free access for you is Dr. Gundry. He puts out so many free podcasts and videos. He has here, go find it right now. The yes and no food list. Print it out, stick it in your cabinet, like, put it on the inside door. That's what I did. And try as many times as you can to switch from the no list to the yes list. Just try to like do switches. And I'm going to help you with some of the things we found that are actually yummy and that maybe your kids will not get mad about and won't really miss the original item because we are so blessed right now to have so many options. Now, I'm right now, I don't know if you can see, in Idaho. It's gorgeous. It's remote. You don't have as many options as I do right outside New York City. And I get that. I totally get that. What I do though, is I do get shipments of some food because it's not even available in my grocery stores. And we have incredible grocery stores by us. So I want to let you know that there are options available even in remote areas now. Thank goodness, because of shipping. Thank you, truckers and carriers and everybody else who does that for us. You are literally keeping my girl alive. And I cannot I'm going to cry. I cannot thank you enough. But we're just so lucky. So it was hard, guys. I literally held my kid so many times in that hospital and doctors just didn't know what was wrong with her. Her heart would start racing. She would pass out. She would have seizures. She would go into the hospital. Nobody knew. She was developing bruises and nobody could figure out why. They were actually going to call Child Protective Services on me because they thought I was abusing her or my husband. We finally were able to prove that those were not bruises. They were there for over a year, but the doctors just kind of blew us off. And if they didn't know, they were like, screw you, you're like messing with my head and I can't be proven that I don't know what I'm talking about. And the reality is they didn't know what they were talking about. So my gift was that when we were on a vacation, we were touring the West. So we were in Wyoming and South Dakota and Utah. And my daughter had 2 episodes that sent us to the hospital. And the first hospital, of course, by the time we get there, my child is like, whereas right before we took her, she was seizing and having like heart issues and like passed out and non-responsive for a good 5 minutes on our campground. So by the time we got her to the hospital, though, she's like, fine. And this kept happening. So we looked crazy. Moms, dads, you are not crazy. You know your child. I was able to see compared to my other kids too, like this is an abnormal medical issue, but doctors were missing it. And I was starting to feel crazy because doctors kept acting like I was crazy. And so here's what finally happened. Another episode where she passed out probably had to do with the elevation and the sun. People with autoimmune disease often have a really hard time with heat and sun. She does have a problem with that. It's a skin issue. The skin, by the way, reflects what's going on internally. So it's completely logical. If you're having trouble inside, it's going to reflect on your skin outside, just so you know. You know that because if you've ever cleaned up your diet and like your skin suddenly is like glowy and stuff, like that's why. It's because when you're healthy inside, your skin will reflect it outside. So she had another episode. We rushed her to another hospital. This hospital was gorgeous. I believe we were in South Dakota at the time. It was this log cabin hospital up on a mountain. It was beautiful. And I was like, this feels right. This feels like how hospitals should be. It was like natural. It was in a natural setting. I'm like, maybe some amazing granola doctor will be able to help me. Like I was like, somebody think outside the box. I can't live like this anymore. And we walk in and this doctor comes in. She's gorgeous. She's like 6'1", this beautiful, stately woman with this black curly hair. And she had like a shock of gray, just stunning. Red lips, beautiful jewelry. She looked just like she was my angel. She was. But anyway, she comes in and I'm telling her what's going on. And I was telling her some of the symptoms and things I've been noticing and how doctors have been blowing me off. And I was in tears. I mean, at this point, I was tired. I was emotionally wrought. I mean, like my heart was just breaking. And if any of you have been watching your kids suffer physically or emotionally for years, you are totally, I get you. I understand you. I feel you. So anyway, I was like kind of holding it together, but barely. And then she looked at me and she like kind of like grabbed my hands and she's like, Mom, I need you to start at the beginning. How was your pregnancy? I lost it, guys. I lost it. I mean, nobody stopped and saw me as a mom and thought that I was valuable. So, this is ugly cry. If you go on YouTube, I'm sorry, you're going to see me ugly cry. But she wanted me to go back to the beginning. And so I did. And I told her my whole history with her and how I was noticing all these things. And she kind of took a deep breath and she's like, honey, I think you're dealing with something really bad. And she said, I've only seen this on Native American reservations before. It's very rare, but I need you to pack up from vacation and go right home. I can't give you any of the tests here because your insurance isn't going to pay for it, which became, guys, I'm $100,000. I was $300,000 of spending money to keep my baby alive for the years that have been going on. It was crazy. And we were just broke. And she said, this is bad. Go home. And but you fight for your daughter. And I was like, I've been, but I was really running out of steam. So she pushed me. She said, you keep fighting. You are your child's advocate. You are her rescue. And that was what I needed. And so I'm going to tell you that right now. You are your child's rescue. It sucks. It really sucks. Thank God we have the internet. Thank God we have good people. You know what's crazy about that woman? I wanted to thank her after we got the diagnosis, after we figured out, because until that point, we did not know she had an autoimmune disease. I was still on the crazy list of moms. Once I found out, she was right. She was the one who sent me in the right direction. I had to go to a dermatologist. We had to get a punch biopsy. We had to get everything done. And then we went to another hospital who actually made her a case study because she's so rare. And they charged me for that, by the way. They charged us $30,000 to do all the testing for the case study and said, come back in 3 months. And I said, what are you going to do? They're like, oh, there's nothing we can do. We're just going to monitor it. I'm like, every 3 months, we're going to come in and spend $30,000? Like, what? So anyway, I wanted to write a thank you note to that woman who spared me a lot of expense, gave me that like armor up mama bear kind of mentality. I needed that. I needed that kick in the butt to not give up because I was really starting to think we were crazy. I went in to write a letter, a thank you, and I was looking for her name and she wasn't there. And I kept looking. I called. I was like, there's this woman. She works for you. She's a doctor. I was describing her and they're like, ma'am, we don't know who you're talking about. We don't have anybody on staff who looks like that. And, every once in a while, I think God sent me an angel. I just don't know. I thank her. So if you're listening, doctor, whoever you are, or my angel, thank you. I credit you completely with my daughter and her health and how my whole journey in life changed. I went from a teacher to a mom who is on a mission to save kids' lives. And I know that mental health takes lives, health takes lives. And I'm starting to learn that our environment is taking lives. And so I really want to just tell you to fight the good fight. There's no fight more valiant than fighting for your kid. And so I'm here to partner up with you to help you figure out these symptoms, to help you get some resources that are at least less expensive to help your child really get on the path to wellness. And I really think it is easier to treat the body than it is to treat the mind many times. And so many times, what is the doctor going to give you? The Band-Aid, the drug to help you with a symptom. That's all we need. We need root cause treatment. We need to stop things from progressing. And unfortunately, when we wait until they're in their 20s, it's too late. The damage is really extensive. And sometimes we don't have any more time. We lose our kids. And so we need to do this when they're young, when they're under our roof. It's really easy to change diet when they're little, really hard to change teenager and adult lifestyle. So lifestyle is really incredibly important in this fight because we can't just go with the mainstream. In the Bible, it says we need to be in the world, but not of the world. And this is so true on so many levels. And God gives us really weird wisdom in the Bible. He even gets into how we shouldn't mix linen and wool. I mean, and now studies are starting to show that our clothing actually affects our balance of hertz or something. I don't even know, but I just learned that this week and I was like, and I'm going to start looking into that. I'm like, what a simple fix just to dress in all cotton or all wool and not to mix that, to look at our linens and just buy cotton PJs and cotton linens. If that really is a thing, like, why would God say don't mix them? Not dumb. He designed a world for us to be really, really healthy in, and God designed it for us. If we are his prized creation on this earth and things are designed on this earth for us, we need to look to the Bible for information about what is good and what isn't good, what we should eat, what we should do, where we should be. Just look at Genesis. We were designed to be in a garden. That was our perfect environment. What are we doing in the garden? We're eating vegetables. He did have us eat meat. Don't forget, as our brokenness was kind of set upon us, our body must have changed. And now he wants us to eat meat, which is really interesting. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Like, I learned that we really did need the protein in a different sense. It's really hard to fight autoimmune disease on a plant-based diet. Super, super hard. But there's good meat and bad meat. And so you have to get on that journey and figure out what exactly are we supposed to be eating and what does that look like for each child. Because remember, even the meat today is tainted. They've got hormone injections and they're eating feed that is really chemically created and sometimes really cheap and inexpensive versus like eating wild grass. You're better off eating bison, to be honest. Go eat buffalo or emu over your local chicken and cow because there's just a different level of feed that's a little closer to God's food because you are what you eat. If the animals are eating crap, you're going to ingest crap. So it just all kind of makes sense when you start to think about the trail. Always think about the trail. Where are the sources of food coming from? And can we replace some of them? Do we need to do some gardening? Do we need to figure that out? We used to just pull a vegetable out of the dirt, brush it off, and eat it. We were eating dirt. Dirt has massive amounts of microbiome goodness. All those little bacteria and stuff are good in our gut, and we needed to eat that from the dirt. And we don't do that anymore. What do? We triple process our vegetables before we eat them at the grocery store. They're triple washed. So what does that mean? We're not getting the micronutrients, the microbiome goodness that we were supposed to do when we ate out of the garden. God does this on purpose. One of the things, the biggest things that our bodies are missing right now is vitamin D. We were in a garden, naked. Our skin was exposed to the sun. We were supposed to get vitamin D. And now we are completely covered, often indoors because we've just moved away from God's kingdom and we're in our own little human kingdoms, right? So we have our little house and we're in there and our vitamin D levels are suffering. Guys, vitamin D is like the key in the ignition of your hormonal system. If you're low in vitamin D, your body can't produce hormones. Now here's crazy thing. So 2 days ago, I was on the airplane. We stopped over in Denver, Colorado, and we were hopping on a plane out to Idaho. And this guy got on the plane next to me and I was sitting next to my husband and two giant men. You know how that is. I'm like sideways trying to fit. They're both sleeping. But anyway, at one point, right before we landed, the guy started talking and he was lovely, this young man. And he had been in the military for 6 years. He had served in Afghanistan and Africa and a couple different places. He had done a stint trying to help children who were soldiers in Africa and sex slaves and things like that. And he had quite the story. He was an amazing young man. And he said, when you exit the army, they do a whole medical test on you. They do a psych test. They do all this stuff. One of the things they do was they test the men's hormones. And they have found that every generation that they've tested in the Army have less and less testosterone. Your kids have even less than the men, because studies are showing that every generation has reduced testosterone. So now we're looking at the identity issues kids are having. We're looking at the anxiety. Remember, testosterone and cortisol kind of like help each other out to not make you like reactive and anxious. Higher testosterone also helps you build muscle. Muscle burns off fat faster. Women have testosterone too, and it's also dropping. Why? Well, testosterone is made in your sleep. This is the most tired generation that's ever walked the earth. What did we used to do? When the sun went down, you went to bed. When the sun came up, you woke up, right? That was the normal flow of how we sleep. And so now when our kids are on their phone until midnight, 2 o'clock in the morning, guys, I have some students who confess, I've been up till 3 in the morning, often this week, like all the time. They're tired. They're tired. That's when their testosterone is being made, is in their sleep. So getting them to bed on time and getting them to get into that deep REM sleep so that they can actually produce testosterone is huge. But there's also all kinds of issues with our food. I really, really would cry out for some studies about what is reducing the testosterone in our kids and how can we naturally lift it? How can we combat that? But you can order testosterone and hormone tests for your kids very cheap online. I'll put out there the Equilife. I used that recently for my hormone test. When you send in your test, they mail you the test kit, you mail it back. When your results come, a doctor calls you. And yes, they are selling supplements. I'm not going to say they aren't. They do have a whole supplement line, but I said, I have all these supplements in my house. She's like, use them. You don't have to order from us. Use those supplements. That's fine. We just want you on those supplements. So for me, my cortisol was wonky. And I think a lot of your kids, when I talk, especially teenagers, their cortisol is wonky. Here's how it's supposed to be. Your cortisol is supposed to come up in the morning, and that helps you wake up. And remember, cortisol is like your up chemical in your body. It causes anxiety, but it also is naturally there to stimulate you. So you're supposed to have higher cortisol in the morning, and then it's going to come down as you're trying to go to sleep. Mine was the opposite. And we started to talk on the phone, and she's like, when have you ever taken magnesium? And I was like, yes, I'm taking magnesium. She's like, when do you take it? I'm like, well, my chiropractor told me to take it, so I usually just take it in the morning so I don't forget. She's like, oh, she's like, okay. Magnesium will drop your cortisol. She's like, you don't want to drop your cortisol in the morning. So she's like, switch it to nighttime. I was like, okay. And she's like, when do you work out? I said, usually in the afternoon or the evening. And she's like, it's so funny. She's like, you got to work out earlier. She goes, working out pops up your cortisol. When are kids practicing? After school, right? My kids, they're in soccer or running. So they both after school go run till 5:30 or so. And then both of them go to the gym afterwards. So they'll be at the gym till 9 or 10 o'clock at night. This is jacking up their cortisol, and this is going to make it really hard to stay asleep. All the hormones don't really get made properly. It's really fascinating trying to think like God told Adam to take care of the animals in the garden. Well, that had to be done in daylight. It's very physical. And a lot of it started in the morning, right? Like you would be feeding the animals in the morning and taking care of them and stuff like that. We've just fallen away from God's ways, right? And some of it is so, so simple. So a lot of you are really freaking out about your child's diagnosis. And there's a couple things I want you to remember from this podcast going on and on. I need to kind of wrap it up. You know your child. That's number one. You know your child best. The doctor does not. 2, the doctor is not trained to prevent as much as to treat. They have great, great wisdom. I do believe that that is perfectly fine to rely on that wisdom. But ask yourself, have I first tried to figure out the root cause? Have I gone to the preventative first? 3, if it came on, maybe it can be undone, right? If it was something that you weren't born with, it started to come on, and that's a great indicator that perhaps you're one of the people who are dealing with a hormonal imbalance or a food intolerance or something like that. Because remember, babies are unlimited food sources, whereas our kids are openly eating whatever. And we have that kablooey of hormones. Hormones do a number on our kids. So when they're not developing properly, it's all a system, right? So you got to get that THS tested and all that stuff, like the thyroids and things like that. You can get it all tested. 4, food sensitivity tests, super cheap. You can get them for like $25 now online. And Literally, I think you like spit in a tube. Some of them have been punch tests with blood, but they're all done really, really easily. You mail it out. Actually, I think one of them is hair. There's so many ways to test. Super fast, super easy, super cheap. Do it. There's no reason not to find out. Their whole family. I just ordered a kit of 4 because I want to just get the whole family tested. I'm curious. I'm also curious if my daughter, who I've had tested, if her food sensitivities have changed because she's been about 2 years on the reduced diet. Go find those resources that are free online. I will throw out to you that Dr. Gundry, Dr. Amy Myers, they have really good resources. Dr. Amy Myers has some quizzes available on her site. She does have food available for order, as does Dr. Gundry. Dr. Gundry has some gut supplements that I would say they're amazing. We found really good results with that. 6, there's a lot of really cool cancer preventative things out there that you can just order on Amazon. Like we found Pectisol. If you go on Pectisol and go look at the medical records and things like that, amazing treatment for cancer. So I put my daughter, who's got autoimmune disease, on Pectisol. It's derived from citrus peel. Totally awesome. It's totally clean and natural. But the results that they're finding in these medical journals are incredible. But there are so many. I mean, there's one that's like all the animals that are red pigmented. They've looked into that red pigmentation and they've got supplements that actually mimic that. And those are awesome for fighting cancer too. There's so much out there. There's also cancer fighting people like, I think it was Chris Beat Cancer. He's a Christian who's trying to help people fight cancer naturally. He has resources for you on how to clean up your diet and get yourself all put together. 7, you can pay people. You can pay people. You can pay functional medicine doctors to run all your tests and work with you one-on-one. Or you can order these tests online, much cheaper, and get email reports and suggestions. Or get a phone call, like Equilife does a phone call and you get a one-on-one person with a doctor. 8, get your kids outside, moving. They have to move. An object in motion remains in motion, right? But it also does so much more than that. It moves the lymphatic fluid through their body. They are supposed to be moving. This is the most sedentary group of kids ever. We have them sitting in their desk for 7 hours a day, and then they go to structured activities where there's very little movement unless they're in a sport. It is up to us to get them to move. So they have to join a gym. But listen, kids follow us. Do it for you. You should do it too. When I started doing, I paid a lot of money, but I joined a group. I'm going to just throw it out there. Warrior Babe. Amazing. Nikki, you are awesome. Says my coach, Caitlin. I love her. What they do is they do the full package. We're learning food. We're learning exercise. We got our hormones checked. We are doing everything. It's for 40 and over women. When I started to put myself first, one daughter followed up. That was Brielle, my little one. She was like, I want to do this too. Because she was built like me and she was seeing me change. She was seeing me feel better, less tired. My body was starting to change. My attitude was starting to change. And she's like, Mom, I was really starting to get nervous that because I looked like you biologically, that I would have the same problems that you did, like putting on weight and being tired and things like that. And I was starting to get really freaked out about how I was built. And she's like, but watching you, like, I want to do this. I want to do this too. I was like, do it together. So it was so fun. We joined the gym together and we lift together and all that. Now she's surpassing me. She's amazing. I love her. She's like a powerhouse. But then Kendra was watching because Kendra loves to run. But running, we were told, for autoimmune disease is not that great. You shouldn't go beyond 2 or 3 miles. And she loves to run like 6 miles like that. She just loves running. So does my other child, my son. He loves long distance runs. But even he's learning that might be too much on his body. But the thing is, they still feel like they need more. So both of them have started lifting. And Kendra comes with us now, or she goes on her own because she can drive. But we all are doing this. We are putting ourselves first. And our body wants to heal itself. Body wants to be in balance. God put systems in place to heal ourselves. But we have to figure out what is it that he's asking us to do? How do we come back to God's ways? I also saw a lot of controversy about things like healing with crystals and stuff like that. I am in no way saying that we should be going to practices like that to heal ourselves. I don't think that's what we mean by this. This is about thinking. Water is designed to run through the rocks underground, and we're supposed to drink it, and it would have minerals in it, natural minerals. That's how God designed water to flow. When we have water that's been highly processed, and then some of us also have extra filtration on our houses, so we're drinking this highly filtered water. what is the goodness that God intended to have in water that we've taken out? So actually, if you have super, super filtered water, you can make yourself sick because you're not getting nutrients that should be in our water. Basics, guys, basics. So just thinking about everything that we're giving our children, remembering that we are our child's advocate. We are the ones who are on the forefront of their health. We are their medical help right now because we are preventing future disease. We're preventing future cancer. We're preventing future mental health issues. We're preventing future autoimmune and sickness. And the number of girls that I teach and talk to, coaching, who say, because they'll say, I have anxiety, I have this, I have that. Okay, talk to me about your stomach. Do you remember when your stomach started to bother you? Every single one of them who has high anxiety can lock into a time when they remember feeling good. When was the last time you felt good? They'd be like, oh, in fourth grade, maybe fifth grade. Yeah, that's when their hormones started to go through the roof. It makes sense. That was puberty. Hormone. We need to do this, guys. And the boys are a little later. So when we're seeing high anxiety in boys as they're a little bit older, remember that's like a symptom of something that came first. When did their stomach start to go bad? I just met another one. I'm coaching another one. Guess what? When did his stomach start to hurt? Called mom. When does his stomach start to hurt? And she's like, yeah, he's been complaining about his stomach lately. Did he ever do that as a kid? No. You following? Got to get them healthy, guys. So reach out to me. I am happy to coach you through this because it is a process, because especially when they're a teenager, they have to want to get better, because they can drive, they can walk wherever, they can eat the school food. Like, they have to understand why we're doing this. We're not trying to be mean. We're not trying to restrict them. We're not trying to like give them a bedtime and take away their phone and stuff like that because we're just mean parents. But sometimes, because it's such a radical shift in how they're going to live, you need some help. You need somebody to come in with like facts, reality, stories, anecdotes, whatever it is, sourcing, like resources that they can go to. This is what we need to do. And I am here to partner with you. I can be the bad guy. I can be the supportive guy. I can be whatever you need me to be, because I've been there. I had to coach my kid into wellness. And hey, by the way, I had to coach my kid into wellness. And hey, by the way, she's in remission. Doctors don't know why. She's this case study in a hospital, and they were like, there's a special camp for kids like that. I mean, parents who hear that, I am so sorry. That is such a hard thing. I mean, that rocked me. That rocked me forever. And it rocked her. I remember that when she heard that, she came in the car afterwards. She was really quiet. She's like, there's a camp for kids like me? Like, what's wrong with me? How am I different? And like, it was so sad. Listen, I'm your boot camp. There's a camp for people like you. People who are not going to give up. People who are going to be their kids' advocate, who are going to fight to the death, who are going to be mama bears, and we're going to armor up and we're going to fight the traditional medicine route, because I don't want to get rid of it. I need it. I love it. When my foot was broken, praise Jesus, they were able to put me back together, and then God let my body heal the rest of the way. But we have to figure out how to get it set up so that God can do the healing. God can do the healing. God will do the healing. We can surrender it to Him. He will give you a wisdom. He will give you a path. He will give you a direction. And I'm going to pray over you right now. Dear God, if this has triggered any thoughts that this is possible, I pray that you fuel that. Jesus, if these moms and dads and kids who are listening, if they can have a hope, I pray that it is a hope in you, that you will restore, you will renew, you will regenerate, you will treat these children, and will help us all to find new levels of health so that we can be active transformers in the world, agents for you, God. Without our health, we are really lacking the ability, the energy, the availability of energy to go and do the things that you're calling us to do. So Lord, I pray that every single family can find health. I pray that if I can come alongside of them, that they'll reach out. But more importantly, if it's not me, I pray that they find the right person. And I pray that they will find their way to wellness, because Jesus, we need to have arms and feet and hands and just minds and just willingness of God's people to do good on this earth and to love each other. And that is going to take health. We can't do that from our sick bed as easily as we can do it when we're out in the world. So help us to have a wisdom that is yours alone. I pray for peace and calm. I pray against anxiety and depression and mental health disorders like bipolar. I pray against their stomach issues. I pray for full restoration of their microgut biomes. And of their leaky gut, if they have that. And Jesus, I pray that our government will start to get more educated about how things are affecting our babies, such as medicines and I'll go there, vaccines and food and all of that. I just pray for wisdom. I pray that the right people will step in. I pray for the right voices to be heard. Jesus, send your people into the world to change it for good. And that change starts with our kids. So Lord, protect our kids. Help us to protect our kids, but help us to empower our kids to become amazing soldiers for Christ. We love you, God. And I love you guys. Have a great one.
If this was any value to you, please like or subscribe. I would appreciate it so much as I'm building my audience. My website, www.selffoundry.com, has lots of free resources and access to more information. You can reach out and get one-on-one coaching from me. So feel free to share, subscribe, like, and hop on there to sign up for some of your own free resources. Love you lots.